The Night Harvester. Ding! The notification blared while Darryl was waking up for his day job. His eyes slowly opened to the cool morning air of his bedroom as he rolled over to grab his phone from the nightstand. As he managed to make the right face for the phone to unlock, he peered into his email. Seasonal help wanted, the bold title read. Harvester needed for fall corn crops, urgently hiring. Darryl knew he wanted to make his daughter's Christmas the best he could since her mom had gone missing just a year ago, the wound still deep for both of them. It would be her first Christmas with just me, Darryl said to himself as he slumped his shoulders half defeated. Darryl threw yesterday's clothes on and pushed the door open to the hallway. Still tugging his shirt on, he cracked Kayla's door. Time for school. Get dressed. We're late. His daughter was truly his child, as her actions mirrored her father's. Darryl went to the kitchen to throw some toast in the toaster and sloshed some orange juice in a glass. The house was small. He knew his daughter heard him as the muffled rummaging sounds penetrated the kitchen wall. Pop! The toaster was aggressively loud, which was a good thing for this early in the morning. Kayla came out with her book bag and uniform assembled and sat down at the table to a plate with what looked to be charred remains of toast. Who burns toast like this, Dad? Darryl smiled. Just eat it and be happy, he said with a smirk. Kayla knew there was no use battling him on this because it was a daily occurrence. Darryl sat across from his daughter and said, I got a job notification today. It's not too far from here. I'd like to earn a few extra bucks. It looks convenient enough to work for us. Kayla looked up at him. Does this mean I get the house to myself? She half-jokingly said. Darryl knew he could trust Kayla. She was mature for her age, always reading, getting good grades. The only thing that shook her confidence was the thought of her mom being gone. Yes, that's right, Darryl replied and followed. I'm sure you'll miss me. Kayla chortled. Dad. They both stood up, almost as if on cue to walk out the door. Darryl liked to walk her to the bus stop, but this time he was preoccupied and made a call to the wanted ad. Come on, pick up, Darryl muttered. The phone had rung an unusually long time before a voice responded. Baylor Farms. It was a decrepit voice, but Darryl shrugged it off. Yes, I was calling to inquire about your seasonal help job posting. Is this still available? Yup, the voice responded. Darryl, trying to put on a positive, upbeat tone, inquired, What days and hours do you need help with? Weekend nights only, the old man replied. Darryl excitedly said, That works perfect for me. I'd like to take you up on the position. The voice replied, There won't be anyone here during those hours, so your first 2 weekends will be in the daytime so we can train you. Then you're on your own. Pay is $15 an hour from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. Can you be here this weekend? Sure can, said Darryl, as the bus roared behind him to a stop. By the time Darryl got over his excitement, Kayla had already gotten on the bus, and Darryl shouted to her as he pointed to his phone. I got it! Kayla visibly rolled her eyes and sat down as the window changed angles with the bus turning. Darryl had felt accomplished. Since he was able to get the job, the week flew by. Saturday came like a whirlwind. He strapped on his steel-toed boots, a dusty flannel, a hat, and some jeans, and headed to the farm. There to greet him was a tall, husky man named Jeremiah. Hi there. Are you supposed to train me? Jeremiah was a man of few words. Yup, he replied. Jeremiah had turned and started walking. Darryl assumptively followed him. As they walked, Darryl took note of the silos and the dairy cows. The farm was not very large. Jeremiah acted like the world's worst guide. Here's the store. We sell various dairy products. My favorite is the blueberry milk. I think you'd like it, he continued. You'll be over here. Our corn is for silage. You'll need to pack the harvest into bags. Darryl peered into the dilapidated shed. A pile of what looked to be chopped up cornstalks sat in the center. Large, heavy plastic bags against the far wall. Just outside the shed looked to be the trailer of the old dirty farmall tractor that it connected to. Jeremiah looked at Darryl with pride and said, "She's a classic." He then turned around and faced back to the tall wooden shed. "Your job is to put the stuff in the pile in the bags. Keep doing it until it's done. That's it. It's simple, but the last guy we had didn't cut it." Jeremiah laughed as if it was a joke. Darryl didn't quite understand it. Jeremiah picked up some of the silage and put it in the bag, then had Darryl do it. After 2 hours, the bag was full. He showed Darryl how to seal the bag and advised him to leave it there, and the crew would move it the following day. The weekend training was a breeze and straightforward. Darryl thought about the next weekend when he began the night shift, where he would be on his own. Darryl began his commute back, but it was only a few moments when he'd happened to see a figure walking in the distance. Darryl squinted to try and prematurely see what could not yet be seen. "Kayla?" Darryl shouted. He lowered the passenger window as he came upon his daughter walking along the cornfield-lined road. "What are you doing out here, Kayla?" Darryl interrogated his daughter. "I was just out looking for Mom," Kayla replied. "I miss her, Dad, and sometimes it feels like she's still with us." Her father leaned to push the car door open. "Get in," he commanded. Darryl sighed heavily. "Kayla, we talked about this. Your mom has been missing for a year, and the police haven't been able to track her down. I know it's tearing us up, but we have to work together as a team now. Promise me you'll stop wandering off on your own." Kayla looked down in disappointed sadness. "She's out there, I know it." Darryl raised his voice. "Enough. Look, I understand, I really do. But I can't afford to lose you too. Look around, Kayla. You are out here in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't live with myself if I lost you too." Kayla picked her head up and looked around, realizing how far she had walked from home in disbelief. At dinner on Sunday, Darryl explained his work to Kayla, who was ultimately unfazed by his excitement, still upset from their earlier interaction. "I'm off to bed," she said. "Good night, Kayla," Darryl replied as he mimicked Jeremiah's lurch-like walk as he followed her down the hall. "I'm not in the mood, Dad." The night carried on. Kayla finished her bedtime routine, flicked her light switch off, and sunk under the covers. Her imagination ran wild with the thought of her mother. She began closing her eyes to drift off to sleep. Suddenly, a light tapping at the window pierced the silence. "Kayla, we must become a family again. Come with me," the ghastly voice faintly said. "Mom?" Kayla questioned. "I'm here, honey. I'm waiting for you." Kayla threw the covers off of herself and sprinted to the door. The ground was wet between her toes from the morning dew. She ran through the flower beds and around to the back of the house. Nothing was there. "Mom?" she said repeatedly, but it fell on deaf ears. Suddenly, Kayla woke up. "Was that a dream?" Kayla asked herself. She moved her comforter to the side, but her feet were still covered in dirt. How was this possible? Her mind wondered. This dream reoccurred nightly, each time Kayla woke up with evidence of her search on her body, but still no recollection of returning to her bed. Darryl said his goodbyes to Kayla and headed out for his first solo night. Since it was autumn, the atmosphere was cold and wet feeling. The air was thick with a foggy haze as Darryl made his way through the back roads. "Baylor Farms," the iron sign said, squealing in the breeze. Darryl turned in and parked. He had a 10-minute walk to get to the shed where he would work for the night, but luckily they left the light on for him as if it were a beacon to lead him to his destination. He began analyzing the shed and its layout, where things were, trying to figure out the starting point. He realized he had forgotten his gloves, but conveniently an old ratty pair was waiting for him. He took note of the eerie quiet that fell upon him, crickets and the sound of him working and echoing in the night. It felt as if he was the only presence within 50 miles, and the silence was surely deafening with tinnitus. Darryl kept his focus tightly on the work he was doing, heaving each load of silage into the bag. Slowly but surely he was filling it. He was able to complete 3 full bags before his shift ended. The time only slowed down at the end from him being winded, but it was bearable. He took off his gloves, put them back where he found them, closed the bags up, and headed back to his truck. Snap! A loud bang rattled and echoed through the field. Darryl screamed an unintelligible word, holding his hat and mirroring crouched position. Wind must have gotten a hold of the door, he said to himself. Darryl put the gloves back where he found them, grabbed his keys, and headed home for the night. The next night went similar. The same thick fog clung to the land. The same dead quiet settled over the farm. Darryl felt a creeping dread as he worked, the silence pressing in on him. He finished another 3 bags of silage, his muscles screaming, before the clock finally hit midnight. As he walked back to his truck, the snapping sound came again, this time from the old dairy barn, and it was followed by a long moan that didn't sound like anything he had heard before. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stood there for a long time, straining his ears, but the only sound was the rustling of the corn stalks in the breeze. He shook it off as his imagination playing tricks on him and drove away, the farm disappearing behind him in the rearview mirror. The following weekend, the terror truly began. The moment Darryl stepped out of his truck, the air was different. The fog was a little thicker, the silence a little deeper, and the smell, a faint metallic odor, like rust mixed with something else, something animalistic and raw. The light from the shed seemed dimmer, a feeble star in the black sky. He worked faster than ever, driven by a primal fear clawing at his brain. To be done and gone. He didn't stop for a break, didn't even slow down. He just heaved and packed, the damp silage sticking to his skin, the smell of it sickeningly sweet. As he made his way deeper down, the pile of a human hand was revealed. Before Darryl could truly understand his situation, a low growl cut through the stillness, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a guttural, hungry sound that sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through him. He dropped the shovel he was using, its metallic clatter impossibly loud. He looked toward the barn, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. Nothing. Just as he was about to convince himself he was hearing things, a piercing shriek ripped through the air. It wasn't a human scream, but something high and frantic, a sound of absolute terror, a sound that could only be a cow in distress. He knew he should go, but the curiosity was too strong. He crept toward the dairy barn, his feet silent on the muddy ground. The moaning and shrieking were now mixed with another sound, a wet, sickening tearing. He peeked through a crack in the old wooden door and saw a sight that would haunt him for eternity. In the dim moonlight, a hulking figure was hunched over a fallen calf. It wasn't a man, nor was it an animal he recognized. It was a monstrous hybrid, covered in dark, matted fur. Its spine bowed and its long arms tipped with dagger-like claws. The creature ripped at the calf's flesh, making a sinewy crunching noise, its snout stained with blood. It let out a low, satisfied rumble, its yellow eyes glinting in the dark. It abruptly stopped what it was doing. Darryl thought the creature was onto him, as his heart beating uncontrollably. Darryl's blood ran cold. He had to get out of there. He had to run. He backed away from the door, careful not to make a sound, and scrambled toward his truck. With the final step back, he tripped on what appeared to be a leg sheared from its body. He fumbled with the key, as his hand shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the lock of his truck door. Darryl's ears peaked at the sound of heavy footsteps rapidly getting louder. The engine sputtered to life and he tore down the dirt road, leaving the nightmare behind him. He didn't sleep a wink that night, The image of the beast and the sounds it made replayed in his mind over and over with the flashes of the gory scene. Darryl couldn't tell if he was of sound mind. Everything he saw felt real, but it couldn't be true. Maybe I'm just overworked, he thought to himself. A deep chill moved from his head to his feet as he thought of the back to the leg that he tripped over. Was that the man Jeremiah said couldn't cut it? Is that why he laughed at the double meaning? These people are sick. He would call Mr. Baylor in the morning and quit. As the sun rose, he felt a bit of the dread lift, and the strange calm came over him. He was safe now. The beast was a memory, a nightmare that he had managed to escape. He called the number for Baylor Farms, the same number he had called to get the job. The line rang and rang and rang until a man's voice finally answered. It wasn't the old decrepit voice of Mr. Baylor. It was a younger voice, familiar, but Darryl couldn't place it. Baylor Farms, the voice said, sounding weary. Hi, I'm calling to quit, Darryl said. His voice said shakily. That's a shame, the voice said. The crops won't harvest themselves. Look, I can't do it, Darryl said. I saw a thing last night. A monster? The voice on the other end chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Ha ha, a monster, you say? What'd it look like? It was a thing. A beast. It was a werewolf, Darryl stammered, his blood freezing once again. The voice on the other end laughed, a full, hearty laugh that made Darryl's skin crawl. Ha ha, werewolf, huh? Boy, you got a wild imagination. My family's been working on this farm for generations, and we ain't never seen a werewolf. Darryl's mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. The strange silence, the growls, the moans, the tore-up cows. He remembered Jeremiah, the man of few words, the way he moved like a predator. The sound of his disgusting laughter rang in Darryl's ears. He was so focused on the monster that he didn't realize the biggest threat was hidden in plain sight. Who are you? Darryl asked, his voice barely a whisper. I'm Jeremiah, Mr. Baylor's son, the voice said, and we'll be seeing you soon. The phone went dead. Darryl stood in the middle of his living room, his mind reeling. He was trapped. They knew who he was, and they were coming for him. He ran to his daughter's room, a new terror gripping his heart. Would Kayla believe me? Was she a monster too? He questioned himself. Darryl questioned everything. They had been surviving on the cattle on the farm. Darryl, in his ignorance, had been working with a family of monsters. He wasn't a simple seasonal worker. He was an offering. A voluntary sacrifice led to slaughter. He looked at Kayla sleeping soundly, her face a picture of innocence. He didn't know. He didn't trust anything. He shook Kayla awake and explained everything. Her eyes glazed over with concern and confusion. Her brow had furrowed as she snapped back. Dad, what's the matter with you? We have to go. We have to pack up and leave this place, leave everything behind and get out. The hysterics were sending Kayla's frustration over the edge. To her, this meant leaving the memory of her mother and her search behind. After the anger and frustration had subsided, Kayla gave in and began packing. Darryl stuffed what he could in the back of the truck, heaving Kayla's things with carelessness as nightfall loomed over them. Kayla was still in disbelief. She did not understand the gravity of what Darryl had witnessed. She reluctantly opened the door and sat in the passenger seat, folding her arms in distaste. Darryl made his way to the driver's seat and sat down. With the turn of a key, they set off. Where are we going, Dad? Questioned Kayla. Anywhere but here, he replied, while squinting through the soupy fog. Darryl was racing down the road, making Kayla visibly uncomfortable. Kayla began to explain to her father what she had been experiencing. The dreams, the unexplainable mud, the voice of her mother. Darryl turned to face his daughter with confusion and stress. "Dad, look out!" With a flash of a silhouette appeared in front of them, causing Darryl to swerve and hit a tree. Kayla recovered first, slapping her dad's back repeatedly. "What was that?" Darryl came to and looked up. The silhouette moved into the dimly lit street. "Mom?" Kayla shouted as she got out of the car. Darryl chased after her, failing to stop her before she reached the outstretched arms of his wife. "Dana?" Darryl shakily said out loud. Before he could shake the bewilderment, she moved out of the light. Her eyes began to glow with that unmistakable yellow Darryl had seen once before. Darryl had realized his fate. The cornfields surrounding them began to rustle with faint growls. Every direction was covered with no route left to escape. When Darryl turned back to Kayla, it was already too late. The creature's teeth clamped down on her neck, the bite from her own monstrous mother. Darryl had lost any sanity he had left. He grabbed an old baseball bat out of the back of the truck as each predator closed in on his position. Swinging wildly, desperate to defend himself, while being blinded by the tears for his daughter, the snarls continued as they gradually stopped encroaching. "What do you want from?" cried Darryl, as he frantically searched for anything he could do. But before he could finish, he saw Kayla rise from her mother's arms. Bones cracking, flesh tearing, blood spurting, claws ruptured her fingertips. Kayla was one of them. The pack of beasts resumed their march to claim Darryl, but it was Kayla who landed the final blow.